I really didn't expect this movie to win. It
Yeah, I
came,
didn't either.
it's not a very popular movie. People don't talk about it still.
Not as much as A Quiet Place. No, yeah, I was kind of surprised by that. I love. I actually saw both of them in the theater. So
Mhm. Yeah. Interesting thing about this movie, it was directed by Fede Alvarez. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his first name correctly, but Alvarez also, this was produced by Sam Raimi, and he also did the remake to Evil Dead, and he used the
right.
same lead actress in both movies. So there's a Sam Raimi connection, and this is his second time working with this actress as well. So they've got some continuity going. This isn't their first rodeo together, the three main people involved in this project. Overall, did you like it?
Yes, yes, I did actually. I liked it. Yeah, I liked it fairly much.
Did you comparing this to A Quiet Place, the film that it beat out? What's your as far as comparing those two?
Honestly, I think I liked A Quiet Place better. Um, I, both of them. I mean, obviously, both of them are implausible in some way, shape, or form. But to me, if you accept the fact that they're A Quiet Place is a monster movie, then within that realm, I thought it was a better film. But I did like both of them.
Yeah, it's funny that you said implausible because that's going to be a lot of what I talk about when we break this movie down. You would
Hmm.
figure that the movie with the monsters would be the implausible movie, but this one just seems equally as implausible with the way the everything kind of plays out. So we start off with a cold open. Usually, cold opens are like a full scene, but this is just one shot. But it comes into play later on. It did intrigue me, from that first shot, I was like, this is pretty interesting. And I wanted to see more, which is what you want to accomplish with a nice cold open. I believe this was supposed to have been shot in Detroit.
I think so.
Yeah.
It was taking place in Detroit. I don't know if it was actually shot there, but probably was because it looked like Detroit had some issues. There was a lot of abandoned buildings, abandoned neighborhoods completely, and it had that feel to it. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm not like I don't do a lot of traveling, so I'm not super familiar with Detroit. From the little I know about Detroit, which is mostly through Eminem songs, it's not a great.
Exactly, exactly.
So I guess stuff like this is plausible, where you would have these rows of abandoned houses where there would just be like one person there, and
Yeah, in fact, I can verify that because I'm not all that far from Detroit. In fact, actually, my mother came from Detroit, but I had a friend who 5, 6 years ago, he and his friends used to just go to Detroit to wander through some of the abandoned houses there because they were having some real problems. Detroit was maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, and he even found Eminem's old house and went inside of it. But there's literally neighborhoods. I don't know if Detroit's cleaned up a little bit since then, but there was literally neighborhoods full of just one house after the other, just completely abandoned neighborhoods, like it was a ghost town. So, and that's definitely what this looked like. And I did confirm that some of this stuff was filmed in Detroit.
I thought that the movie would go for a little bit of social commentary with that kind of a setup, but they kind of eschewed from that when they had further opportunities to do that later on in the film, which we'll get into. So we start off with the first robbery, and there's a lot I like about this film, and there's a lot I don't like about this film. There's not a lot of in between for me. The characters are something I really don't like because they are razor paper thin. I mean, the paper's so thin, if it falls on your hand, it would slice it open if it hits the edge. Within like a few seconds of these characters being on screen, we already know everything we need to know about them, which at times can be a good thing, especially with a movie that's 90 minutes long. You want to keep up the pace. The last movie we did, Village of the Damned, a very short movie that kept the pace going. But this didn't work for me. I mean, you had the nerdy guy who was clearly the cuckold. He was going to be there for the girl that wasn't his girlfriend. He'd be willing to do anything for her, even though her boyfriend is right there next to them. I hate characters like these, but I guess they do exist.
All right, so just like last time, no cash and total take has to fall below 10 G's.
Yeah, whatever, Judge Judy. Come on.
Let's do this.
You also have the macho tough guy named Money.
Yeah.
Very appropriately, I guess. But he is very one-dimensional, and we even get that at the beginning. he's just pissing on the floor and knocking things down. I mean, again, very paper thin. They just want to establish these characters like that. And of course, we get the archetype for movies like these, the uh, woman in charge, final girl type character. And I think like this character was kind of invented in the 80s with slasher movies. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, you have Psycho in the 60s, maybe you could say then, but this character really got popularized in the 80s with slasher movies. And back then, it seemed like it was very narrow. They had to be young and attractive and white. Now it's like, it's not just that, but they also have to specifically be blonde as well. Like I started thinking about these recent movies, You're Next, Happy Death Day, Ready or Not. They all almost look like carbon copies of each other, physically and personality wise.
You're exactly right, because it's in terms of when you picture the all-American beauty, you picture a blonde, white American girl, and that's just exactly what they're throwing out there. There's a bit of eye candy too. So
Yeah, yeah. But it's not just the looks of the characters, that's fine. But just the personalities. They're just like, they don't vary in any way. They don't give you anything creative, which kind of loses me a little bit off the bat with the setup. It's like, all right, like I kind of know the arc of these characters already because I've seen these characters in a million movies. There is a metaphor of a ladybug that plays into the movie as well. You have the ladybug landing on the lead actress's arm, Rocky. It flies off her arm, and it's just, at the time I think, all right, that's a metaphor of just her wanting to escape, because the dialogue right after it flies away is her talking about moving and things like that. There's another typical trope in movies, the big final score. Like, this is the big one. Once we get this one, we're done and we're out. And money comes up with this from his connection. And of course, we have the one reluctant character. Here's the nerdy guy, Alex, who doesn't want to do it, and they're kind of pressuring him. What do you think of the setup of the movie so far before they get into the house and all that stuff?
well, you had to have some sort of setup to get them there. Again, we talked about the word implausible. There was a lot of things about even the setup that was implausible. How they're going to find out about this guy has money, why they would think he would have it in his house. I mean, they come up with reasons which make sense in their movie, I guess, but in the real life, it just, there's a lot of it that's just implausible. So,
Yeah.
but you have to set it up, and that's where they went. So,
Yeah. So I guess getting into that a little bit more, I guess Alex's father works for a security company, I guess.
yeah, I think that's what it was.
But I don't know how security companies work because I've never had a surveillance set up in my house before. But do the security guys have keys to everyone's house? Because that's basically what they're implying, right? That Alex's father has the keys to all of these houses in his home desk drawer.
That's what they were implying. To me, that's news to me. To me, security places are basically telephones and buzzers. If they detect something, they let you know. I'm not aware that anybody had keys, at least not the type of security places I'm aware of. But
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah, I mean, as far as real life, who knows? But in the movie, that's the setup. That's why Alex is part of the group, is that his father has the keys to these different places. And we see in that first scene, as they leave, they break the window. At first, he didn't know what was going on, but then as the setup goes on, you see that he returns the key to his father's drawer. So obviously, they get in with the key, and then they break the window to make it seem like they didn't get in with the key, so it doesn't trace back to the father. But by breaking it as they leave, they have more time to escape because the cops come when it breaks as they're leaving, as opposed to when they're entering. So, like you said, it makes sense in the world of the movie, but not in the world we're living in.
Right.
At least they do say. At least they stay consistent with the world they create, I guess. So,
Right. They created a scenario and they worked with it. So.
Yeah, yeah. We get a visit with Rocky's cartoonish family. This movie doesn't go for subtlety, and again, they don't have any complexity to the characters at all. You have the mother in the trailer park, and she has the stepdad or the boyfriend who's broke, and she's doing the blowjob signs to her daughter, and You have the little sister who she just wants to get her sister out of that life. What did you think of the Rocky setup? Did it get you on board with the Rocky story, or did it lose you like it lost me?
Well, I think initially, because we're dealing with three kids who are criminals. They're felons. They're bad people. They're doing bad things, but they want us to have sympathy for them at some point. So they have to give us a good reason why we should feel sorry for her. So that's kind of what I was thinking they did with that. Obviously, the mom is trailer trash, and we were supposed to feel bad for her that, you know, she's got this noble cause, why she's doing this stuff, so she can get her and her sister and get them the hell out of there so they don't grow up in that same sort of environment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's obviously clear what they're trying to accomplish. My only issue is the execution. It's just so, I don't know. It's too simple, and it, when it's so overt what they're trying to do, it's like, okay, you're supposed to feel this way instead of just like telling a good story and letting me make up my mind on my own. That's where it kind of loses me, because I love movies like Scarface. Breaking Bad was one of my favorite TV shows. I can root for the bad guys, you know?
Right.
You don't have to like have this ham-fisted storytelling to make me root for, like you said, these three criminals. But anyway,
Tony Soprano on The Sopranos as well.
yeah, even a better example. That's a great show as well. From there, we get some exposition, and again, it's more trying to establish Rocky's really a good character at heart. She tells the ladybug story. She has a ladybug tattoo on her arm. They're really hammering this metaphor home for you if you don't get it. And just her talking about wanting to escape. And she's telling all this to Alex, who's just, you know, the cuck, blindly in love with her. And he finally, you know, says, all right, I'll do it. Like you said, they established that they're robbing a blind guy. And I guess they have to get as much sympathy on these characters as they can before they go and rob this poor blind guy who's like an army vet. So
yeah.
So for me, none of that stuff works. But the stuff that you're paying for is what's coming up. And that's, you going to a movie like this, you're paying to see a blind guy run around a house, killing a bunch of people, trying not to make a sound. If you're looking for anything more from this movie, good luck, you know, because they fall short in every other category. But they finally get to the house. And to me, this is where I lose any sympathy that they may have built up with those scenes, because these aren't like some schmoes that are just like robbing to survive. I mean, they have specific food poison to knock out the dog. They have like this gas thing that knocks out the old guy. They have the crowbar. They have a gun. These aren't like, these are sophisticated,
right,
heavy duty criminals. These aren't like broke kids living in Detroit robbing because they have no other option. So they do all that, like I said, they knock out the dog, they knock out the old guy, and there's a crisis of conscience kind of with the Alex character, because once Money takes out the gun, he's like, well, we shouldn't do this. I'll ask you this. Is this a crisis of conscience? I say no, because he wasn't having any moral dilemma about robbing him. He was just worried that the gun means if we get caught, we'll get more time.
If he's got a gun, that gives him a reason to shoot us. You know, he could shoot us legally. But he also, to go back just a little bit, they also mentioned something when they found out that he was blind, a little touch of conscience there too. It's like, really rob a blind guy? And I think it was Money who said, well, just because he's blind didn't make him a saint. You know, I don't even know where that rationale came from, because as far as I know, they had nothing against this guy. In fact, this guy you should have some sympathy for, because his daughter died tragically in a drunk driving crash. So I don't know where that came from, but yeah. I'm sorry. What exactly was again?
No, yeah. Do you buy that this is a crisis of conscience for Alex, where he's like, we shouldn't do this after he takes out the gun?
Yes, slightly, but certainly not enough to stop him from doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and like you said, I mean, even more backstory on why these characters are very unlikable, no matter how hard the screenwriters are trying to make us have sympathy for them. they go into it knowing his situation. They don't find it out along the way. They go into robbing him knowing exactly what's happened to him.
Right.
Who's there?
We see that the knockout gas didn't really work. And even with that, that was a weird scene when they knocked him out as well, because I don't know if you noticed this, but when they entered the house and money started going up the stairs, you heard like a thudding noise. And you saw the camera point of view. I'm thinking that's his footsteps and that's his point of view. And it goes into the room, it goes under the bed where we see the gun. But then the camera flips around and we see money was never in the room. So that whole thudding noise and the whole going through the house was really there for our benefit. It wasn't really a point of view. And then even when, I'll call him Avatar, because that's the movie everyone knows him from, even when Avatar wakes up, he wakes up from a sound of money, but his TV was on. So he didn't even hear the TV, but he heard money, which is something that's very consistent, is the inconsistency of what he can actually hear and how well he can hear. But anyway, we finally get to one of the scenes why we got to the movie. Alex decides he's gonna go because he's like, hey, you brought out a gun, I'm done, I'm out of here, I'm gone. So he's heading towards the door. He uses Money uses the gun, shoots open the door. That wakes him up from the gas. And then we have the confrontation where he's about to, he doesn't want to shoot him, has the gun in front of his face, and there's a pretty good standoff. This is one of the scenes why you're in the movie, and I thought this scene was pretty entertaining, down to like the way that Money was killed and that shot of his face lighting up like a jack-o'-lantern when he gets shot.
Yeah, it was nice, and I can certainly understand that, because obviously these, like you said, there's sophisticated criminals, which again is a little bit implausible, but nonetheless, they are sophisticated criminals. But I think your best criminals don't ever want to cross that line if you're a pro at this and you've been doing this a long time, you don't want to hurt anybody, you want to kill anybody, because you know that could be big time consequences. So he's doing his best not to do that, and he's kind of has that dilemma. Is like, what am I supposed to do? I got a gun on this guy, but he keeps walking towards me. What am I supposed to do? And I don't think he'd ever been in that situation before, at least not that I could. I got that was new to him, and he was starting to panic because he didn't know how to react.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did establish that he didn't really have a gun before.
Why'd you bring a gun? This is a soldier's house, Alex. Like, I'm gonna come in here without some chrome.
Money, you've never shot a gun before.
But that was a big chance on Avatar's part, because usually people breaking into your house are either they're actually sophisticated criminals, and if they're going to judge going to jail versus your life, they're going to take your life rather than go to jail. And if it's not a sophisticated criminal, it's some drug addict who's high, who's not going to know any better. So either way, you're taking a big risk by walking up to someone who breaks into your house in the middle of the night with a gun. But it works out for him, or we wouldn't have had a movie. What do you think of Rocky here? She seems scared, but this is a theme that will continue for her in the movie. She didn't really seem too heartbroken about her boyfriend being killed in front of her. We see that the Avatar goes into the safe and she's in the closet. For some reason, he doesn't hear her in the closet behind him. She sees the number and she has the wherewithal to still go through with the robbery.
I don't know. Again, there's a lot of implausible stuff here, because clearly they didn't expect to have a shootout there, and then when somebody gets shot in front of you, somebody that you know and you care about, the fact that she could keep her composure and not say a word, it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. Even if she kept her mouth shut, she could have fallen backwards or just jerked or something and made noise, and yet she didn't. So again, you got to suspend disbelief a little bit, I guess, and because like I said, if she screams right there, you might not have a movie.
Yeah. And again, the inconsistency is Avatar, because he was able to use sound to kill Money, but as soon as he walks away, he walks down the hall, a narrow hallway, and literally almost runs right into Alex. He was inches away from him, and he didn't hear anything. Like, he almost bowled him over, And you didn't hear a goddamn thing. It didn't make any sense.
When people who have lost their sight, they are more attuned to all the other senses. So his hearing should be even more enhanced because of that. Yeah. So
Yeah, it was just odd. And he also boarders up the house despite the fact that Money said he was alone. At this point, it seems like he believed him. So it didn't make sense for him to board up the house, but they had to have him bordering up the house, so he did it anyway. And again, the sense is very inconsistent. He's in the same room with them a lot, but he doesn't smell or hear them, but he smells the shoes.
yeah.
How do you smell the shoes, but you don't smell the people wearing them or hear the people wearing them? But after he sees the shoes, he knows someone's in the house, which again, it seemed odd timing because it seems like after he found the shoes is when he should have boarded up the house instead of before. So that didn't really make a lot of sense. But he doesn't take it well, and he kind of loses it, and he just goes ape shit because he finds out once he finds this out, he goes to his safe and he sees all the money's gone, and he had a lot of money. I think they said at the end of the movie it was around $1 million in the safe. What are you doing with all that money in your house? I don't get that. Like, I don't know what sense it makes for his character to not want to use a bank because he didn't get the money illegally. He got it from, I think, insurance or something like that from his daughter's death. They go through the basement to escape. They find a girl trapped there. Within seconds, they already know who she is, why she's there, and they're able to get her free. They make a run for it. As they're about to leave, Avatar is waiting outside with a gun. He shoots at Alex, but only clips his ear, but ends up killing the girl that was in the basement. From there's another cool sequence in which he shuts off the power. Now, this is always kind of weird. Like, how do you handle this in movies where there's complete darkness, but obviously we have the viewer have to see what's going on? So they did kind of like a washed out gray and black look. I thought it worked pretty well, the look of it. And I thought the actors sold the performance pretty well as far as not being able to see. I thought it was a fun sequence.
It reminded me a little bit of Silence of the Lambs. At the end of that movie, the guy was in the basement with the lights out, totally dark, but he had the glasses, the night goggles. So, but yeah, no, I thought it played just fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
they have to show us something. So
Yeah, I thought they handled it pretty well. And again, Alex, Cat of Nine Lives. He has the gun pointed to his head. That's where Avatar had run out of bullets, so he survives that. They escape the basement, and they're about to head for the door, but then the dog wakes up, which is kind of funny. I mean, obviously, it's kind of silly too, implausible that just as they're about to leave the house, the dog comes. Go, upstairs, yeah, go. This starts off another fun sequence for me as well, where they're being chased around. And there are a few turning points in this movie where Rocky's given a choice, and if she makes the right choice, people live, and if she doesn't, people die.
Rocky, let's go.
I think we should stay.
At that point, her boyfriend would have lived. And here we have another turning point.
What are you doing?
I'm pressing the panic button. If I manage to get in range, the system will call 911 and the police will
No, wait. But then we wouldn't keep the money.
Alex says, hey, we should just call the cops. And she's like, no, if we call the cops, we're not getting the money. So we're not calling the cops. And then they decide to stay in the house. And it's a fun sequence where we see Alex gets chased and he gets knocked out on top of a pantry. I guess that was where it's like glass top of a pantry, and it's cracking as he's on top of it. And we have Avatar walking around below, which is kind of cool. And then we have the dog chasing Rocky through a crawl space. I thought both of those sequences, this entire sequence is pretty fun.
yeah, they were fun, but I kind of had to laugh at that dog because why is it that if you have a mean guy, his dog's got to be just as mean too? I've been around lots of dogs, and most dogs are pretty friendly, but this one's a killer dog. Of course it is. But I don't know. But yeah, it was kind of cool. Again, a little bit implausible. Why are there crawl spaces in this house? And the dog knows where they are. But it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, yeah. You got to turn your brain off. You really do. Leave your brain at the door once you hit play. But yeah, so, and another thing with this movie, aside from the possibility, is that no one ever gets hurt. People get banged around, beat up, shot, and they just get up like nothing happened. Alex does fall through the glass pantry when Avatar shoots it. And he lands and he just pops right back up. And then we have more inconsistency with what he can hear, because he's been in the room with them several times. When he almost bumped into Alex walking down his own hallway, when he was pulling away Money's body, and then Alex and Rocky were both in the room, when he's opening his safe and Rocky's right behind him looking at the combination. He doesn't hear any of that. But then Alex from like 2 rooms away is like, has his hands over his mouth, trying not to breathe, and he barely screams. And then he goes running after him, and he finds him like in the laundry room, and they have this big fight. It's like, it's very inconsistent, like what he can hear. And the only way like you knew he can hear something is if there was a close-up to his ear. And it didn't matter where anyone was. If they made a sound when the camera was close to his ear, he heard them. Otherwise, you could be just like knocking over furniture in front of him and he wouldn't hear you. But there was another pretty cool fight sequence, I thought, in the laundry room. The only, again, of the things, the biggest one to me, which does come into play again towards the end, was for some reason loud sounds affects him. I didn't get that. They're like dog whistles to his ear. When the washing machine went off, he just went crazy.
Yeah, no, I didn't understand that. It seems like he gets disoriented when he hears. They weren't even particularly loud noises. So again, I don't have an explanation. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it definitely happened to him, and I couldn't figure out why.
Yeah.
Unless he's more, well, again, they weren't even that loud. I was going to say, when you're blind, you're more in tune to other things such as hearing. But yeah, I don't know.
We already established he can't hear people in front of him, so who knows? It's very inconsistent with that. And they established a few implausible things, but they never established that, or if I missed it, about his sensitivity to loud noises. But I don't even think a washing machine is that loud, or else
no,
in your house.
No.
Yeah. And I don't know what that's called, like a bush.
Oh, some sort of garden shoe something, or?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. But he's basically just stabs it right through Alex or Nine Lives' chest, and you think he's dead at this point. You would assume so. And then from there, he goes after Rocky. And again, falling doesn't affect people in this world, because he falls on her neck after being chased by the dog through the crawl space. And again, you have to wonder on the construction of this house, because it seemed like a pretty long fall. So I don't know how many stories this house is supposed to be, because that fall landed her, it didn't even land her in the basement, it landed her in another room, which when Avatar opened the crawl space, she again fell on her back and just popped right back up. So then he promptly punches her dead in the face like 5 or 6 times and chokes her. And she wakes up with a few bruises. This isn't a knock specifically on this movie, but I think movies in general don't handle bruises too well, especially in this day and age where people see like UFC and then like fight compilations online with like World Star Hip Hop and things. People know, even if they haven't been into a fight, there's a lot of swelling when you get knocked around. And movies still haven't caught up with that. They just have like the bruising makeup, but no swelling at all. She gets beat up pretty bad, but she gets up without the worst for wear. And again, we see her lack of empathy for anything that's been going on. A bunch of people have been dead, have been killed. And she's still bargaining with this guy, saying, hey, you're not such a bad guy. I know that girl killed your daughter.
understand you. She killed your daughter. I wanted her to pay. I understand that. I won't tell anyone.
I'll leave and I won't say a word. After seeing her boyfriend get killed trying to bargain with this guy.
Please, just let me walk. And we can both be alive.
She still bargains with him. And after seeing her boyfriend get killed, she still has no emotion of anger towards this guy.
Please let me go.
I mean, her boyfriend to me was a piece of shit. So maybe,
They were still a couple.
yeah. So maybe she was thinking, well, I'm going to move anyway. I was going to leave him anyway. Why not? He's gone. But I wanted to mention one thing. I didn't see this. I mean, I saw the scene, but I didn't realize it. But I read it later on when he was in the laundry room and the garden shears came down. Apparently, he was able to fool Avatar because he was using Money's body, which apparently must have been close by, and apparently he stabbed Money's body, and he thought he was stabbing Alex. I didn't see that. I didn't catch that, but I read that's how he pulled that off. That's how he was able to not be killed.
Huh.
Yeah, it might be going. I read that after I'd already watched it. I didn't go back to double check that, but that's what I read. Or I saw a brief description of it. So maybe it was just a very quick shot, and he pulled that body over. I don't know, but that was apparently the explanation as to how he survived that.
I'm trying to think of the timing of that. So someone is about to push garden shears down into your body, and instead of moving, you have the amount of time to move your body, move another body in your place while those garden shears are coming down. That seems like I don't know. It didn't seem like enough time to do that, but I don't know. I'll put the clip online and send, in the video, and we'll see. But I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I didn't notice that either. And I read that after. I was like, huh? Because how is he surviving this? And then I read later on. I was like, oh, that's how it. But that seemed. Wow, who knows? We'll take a look.
At least if, I don't know, I guess maybe they wanted it to be like a surprise type thing when he woke up, but you would think that we the audience, would have seen Money's body in there.
Right.
I don't know. But yeah, I'll put the clip in and we'll see. But yeah, so he gets up from that. Obviously, I guess he wasn't stabbed, so maybe that doesn't count as one of his 9 lives. But he's up, and while he's getting his bearings together, we're in the basement getting some exposition, and then we find out that the movie really doesn't want us to root for Avatar on any level. And I thought this is where there could have been like some shades of gray, where you have these 2 surviving characters and you kind of empathize with both of them, but then you kind of see both of them as kind of being in the wrong. And I thought that would have been interesting, but instead they eschewed from that and said, okay, don't have sympathy for me because I'm this blind vet who got blinded fighting for our country, and here are these terrible kids that are robbing me, and they're stealing the money from my daughter's death. No, forget all that. This guy is kidnapping women, and I guess they didn't want to say rape.
Not a rapist.
Because maybe there would be backlash, so instead he's injecting them with his semen to get them pregnant. And I was like, my God, this is turning into like a convoluted Bond-esque, explanation, and it just got really over the top and weird. Once they started to try and defend him not raping.
Not a rapist.
And then the little crane that he pulled her up on, the inseminator, I was just like, man, you guys are going out of your way to not say rape.
Not a rapist.
And to also hate this guy. So he puts her up on the thing, and he spreads her legs open. He's heating up his semen, and it's just like, a blind guy is doing all of this, and he built all of this. So he heats up his pre-frozen semen, and he has his, what do you call that, like a baster?
Like a turkey baster, yeah.
He's about to turkey baster has come into her and keep her in the basement for 9 months. It's just like, oh, dear God, this movie's getting off the rails. But then Alex comes in at the end and knocks him in the head with a hammer. But of course, in this movie, that's just a slight bruise getting knocked in the back of the head with a hammer. And again, this is another turning point, but they kind of switch sides. Instead of Alex saying, hey, we should call the cops, Alex is saying, no, we should go with the money.
You're gonna rot in prison for what you've done.
Rocky, we can't involve the cops now. If we steal $1 million in cash and then leave the cops here, he'll tell them about us.
And he's like, hey, it's up to you, Rocky.
But if you choose, I'm with you.
And here, if she would have done it at this point, you know, no one else would have died anymore. Like, enough people have died, but no, she wants to leave with the money. And promptly right after, in the next scene, as they're leaving, Alex gets shot. I think for the final time he's killed, but on IMDb, there said there's a sequel in the works for this. So,
Really?
yeah, they said there wasn't a ton of information, but they said the script was written in 2018. But that was the last update I read on the page. But
Okay.
yeah, there's an IMDb page. So who knows? Alex may still be alive. We don't know that for sure. But anyway, Alex gets shot. As the door opens, she has the money. She shows very little emotion for her friend. She's like, screw you, I'm out of here. She runs out. She has that scene, which is in a lot of movies. I think I saw it for the first time in Creepshow, where that water monster blob type thing.
I beat you!
She kind of has her moment like that in this movie.
You're worthless out here.
That's pretty funny. And we did Cujo before, and I think you mentioned it would be good as a short story. I thought the sequence with her and this dog was better than the entire movie of Cujo. I thought that whole sequence is pretty good.
Definitely was. And although, even to go back a bit, I think this whole movie could have worked as a short story as well. Forget the filler in the beginning, forget the filler at the end. Just the stuff in the house would have been a good, maybe 30-minute short also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, they could have even done a feature in the house even.
Yeah.
You know, knock off another 10 minutes and just start in the house. Because honestly, that's the only stuff that worked. I mean, that and the car sequence was just outside the house with the dog. But aside from that, all that setup, it didn't do anything for me to empathize with the characters. I just thought it was like soap opera X level writing. It's like writing you could see on like daytime TV. It wasn't like movie worthy writing, you know, there wasn't any complexity to it. I thought it would, maybe us knowing less about them and starting in the house would have been better.
I think the overriding theme here is that there's just no sympathy for any of these characters because they're all pretty rotten.
Yeah, absolutely. I
In one way or another, they're all rotten. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe Alex a little bit, but I just didn't like him because he had no spine. But he's still a thief. So yeah, forget that.
Yeah, maybe Rocky's little sister. She's about the only good character in the movie.
Probably. So yeah, she goes back to the house, and again, they beat us over the head with the ladybug thing. The ladybug lands and it flies away, and she sees the remote for the alarm system. And again, the alarm system, he goes crazy. Like, I don't get it, but it makes him go insane. But the minute it stops, he's back to normal. There's no residual like pain. The minute it stops, the pain goes away completely. It's like if someone's punching me and beating the hell out of me, I'm still gonna feel the pain after they stop punching, you know? But the minute it stopped, he stopped feeling the pain, but it was enough to give her the upper hand, and she was able to knock him down, knock him in the basement, and escape. And then we have the open ending where our two protagonists, or you pick the antagonist, you pick the protagonist. They both seem like antagonists to me, But she escapes with the money and her little sister, and then he loses his money, but he doesn't get framed for the murders because they legitimately did break into house. And there was a brief scene in there as well where we see he poured some liquid over
Right.
the woman in the basement's body, assuming that's acid or something.
Correct.
That took care of her body. I don't know what about all the other evidence of like the chains and the little compartment, the injections for the semen, and the whole bed and the whole setup in the basement where she was trapped. I don't know, how they look past all of that, but we'll just suspend our disbelief for everything else, and
Right.
just because they didn't see a body, they just viewed him as a hero. So on the news, he's this hero who killed these two kids that broke into his house. The only thing that seemed didn't make full sense to me is I was expecting at some point for Alex's father to play a role in the movie, because they really emphasized early on that he didn't want to leave because of his father. I'm saying that maybe his father is sick, maybe his father needs him.
I got my dad here.
Maybe his father would have had some emotion about his kid dying. I was surprised they didn't even introduce his character in any kind of a way. But aside from that, they kind of wrap everything up where she walks away and he escapes. And it did seem like it's primed for a sequel. But I don't know how this movie did financially. I assume it did pretty well.
It was very well, actually. I think it was a small budget, and it made maybe about 200 million. So it did very well. Yeah, and the critics liked it too. I think one thing that I was expecting at the end, which didn't happen, was that from his hospital bed and such, there was no mention that any money was stolen, or that there was a third perpetrator. And to me, I would think that was something you would want to mention, because while I don't think he wants her to be captured for obvious reasons, for the other reasons, but he lost a lot of money in this process. And being a veteran, there probably would have been some sort of Kickstarter campaign or something to get him some of that money back. And he's a hero. He's a blind hero. He lost his daughter. There's a lot of sympathy there. He probably could have made more money from that had he mentioned that he got stolen.
Yeah. That's a good point, maybe in the real world, but I think in this world, they were implying that him not mentioning the money was a way of saying, okay, you walk away with the money, don't come back for me, don't say anything to the cops, and you can have the money and I won't say anything. And in turn, I won't say that you were part of it. I think that was kind of like their long distance
Understanding
or deal kind of a thing. So I think that's
or it could be the sequel, like you're talking. He's gonna stalk her in California somehow.
All of the stuff that you would pay to see this movie for, thumbs up. The stuff around the house, the tension, all that stuff was done pretty well. Anything where you have to think, or everything outside of the house minus the dog chasing in the car scene, was just like terrible, like bad, not even bad, good, just like awful. But overall, people are going to see this movie for the house stuff, and because of that, I'll give it a thumbs up. What's your
Yeah, I would definitely give it a thumbs up as well. I mean, to me, the big thing is it was entertaining. I enjoyed it, and I liked the premise. Like I said, stuff that was in the house, the premise is kind of fun. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed it and watched it again at some point.
Not a rapist.